Tonight, we'll unleash the most dangerous Arctic blast to hit America this winter season. As the sun sets today, a massive surge of polar air is already beginning its southward march from the Canadian Arctic, bringing with it temperatures that will plunge well below zero and wind chills that could reach life-threatening levels across much of the United States. This is not just another cold snap following Winter Storm Fern. This is a meteorological assault that will fundamentally alter the weather pattern across North America for the next week and potentially reshape the remainder of winter 2026. The atmospheric setup driving tonight as Arctic blast represents one of the most extreme polar air mass intrusions we have witnessed in nearly a decade, with meteorological data indicating conditions that rival the most severe cold outbreaks in modern weather records. The same disrupted polar vortex that contributed to Winter Storm Fern has now created a direct pipeline from the most remote regions of the Canadian Arctic Islands directly into the heart of the United States, allowing temperatures that normally remain locked near the North Pole to spill southward with unprecedented efficiency and devastating consequences. The physics behind this extreme cold air mass movement involves complex interactions between the stratospheric polar vortex tropospheric jet stream patterns and surface high-pressure systems that create what meteorologists describe as an Arctic Express, a rapid transport mechanism that can move air from the polar ice cap to populated mid-latitude regions in just 48 to 72 hours. When these transport mechanisms align as perfectly as they have for tonight's event, the results can be meteorologically and socially catastrophic. Current satellite imagery and upper air observations reveal that this Arctic air mass has maintained its intensity with remarkable efficiency during its southward journey, losing very little of its extreme cold characteristics as it moves away from its source regions. This retention of temperature extremes is particularly unusual and indicates that the atmospheric pattern driving this outbreak is exceptionally strong. Understanding the magnitude of what begins tonight requires examining both the immediate temperature impacts and the broader implications of this atmospheric pattern. Current forecast models are indicating that this Arctic air mass originated from regions north of 80 degrees latitude, where January temperatures routinely drop to 40 or 50 degrees below zero. When air masses from these extreme northern latitudes are displaced southward, they bring with them intensity of cold that most populated areas of North America rarely experience. The timeline for tonight to NIA's Arctic invasion is becoming crystal clear as meteorologists analyze the latest data from weather stations across Canada and the northern United States, with automated weather stations in northern Manitoba and Saskatchewan already reporting temperatures dropping below 40 degrees below zero as the air mass continues its relentless southward progression. By sunset today, temperatures will already be dropping rapidly across the northern plains states, as the leading edge of this massive cold air mass crosses the international border, with cities like Fargo, Grand Forks, and Duluth experiencing temperature drops of 30 to 40 degrees within just a few hours. The velocity of this temperature decline is particularly concerning, as rapid cooling of this magnitude places enormous stress on infrastructure systems, building materials, and mechanical equipment that may not have time to adjust gradually to the extreme conditions. Water pipes, automotive systems, and even structural components of buildings can fail catastrophically when subjected to such rapid and extreme temperature changes. By midnight tonight, sub-freezing temperatures will extend as far south as the Oklahoma-Texas border, marking one of the fastest southward progressions of Arctic air in recent memory and demonstrating the exceptional strength of the high-pressure system driving this cold surge. Cities like Oklahoma City, which experienced significant impacts from Winter Storm Fern just days ago, will face an entirely different but equally dangerous weather threat as temperatures plummet from near normal levels into the single digits within hours. But the true intensity of this cold blast will become apparent during the pre-dawn hours of Friday morning when the core of the Arctic air mass settles across the Great Lakes region and begins its push toward the eastern seaboard, creating a temperature gradient so sharp that adjoining states could experience differences of 20 to 30 degrees within just a few hundred miles. Morning temperatures on Friday are forecast to reach levels that many areas have not experienced since the notorious Arctic outbreaks of 2014 and 2019, with actual air temperatures dropping to 20 to 30 degrees below zero across much of the Midwest and threatening to break daily record low temperatures in dozens of cities. The atmospheric dynamics driving this extreme cooling involve what meteorologists call cold air damming, where the dense, heavy Arctic air becomes trapped against geographic features like the Appalachian Mountains and Great Lakes, concentrating the cold and preventing it from mixing with warmer air masses. This creates pockets of exceptionally intense cold that can persist for days, even as milder conditions exist just a few hundred miles away. Forecast models are indicating that some locations in northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan could experience actual air temperatures approaching 40 degrees below zero, which would rank among the coldest temperatures recorded in these areas in more than a decade. When combined with the wind chill effects discussed below, These conditions will create a level of danger that requires immediate and comprehensive protective measures for anyone in the affected areas. The wind chill factor associated with this Arctic blast elevates the danger to potentially life-threatening levels for anyone caught unprepared, as the combination of extreme cold and persistent winds creates apparent temperatures that far exceed the danger thresholds established by the National Weather Service for human safety. Sustained winds of 15 to 25 miles per hour will combine with these extreme temperatures to create wind chill values that could reach 50 to 60 degrees below zero across the northern plains and upper Midwest, representing conditions where exposed skin can develop frostbite in less than 10 minutes, and where even brief outdoor exposure can be dangerous. These wind chill values place the affected regions in the highest category of cold weather danger, where normal winter clothing provides inadequate protection and where specialized Arctic-grade gear becomes necessary for any outdoor activity. At these temperature levels, breathing becomes difficult as the extreme cold can cause bronchospasm and other respiratory distress, particularly for individuals with pre-existing respiratory conditions like asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. The National Weather Service has established specific protocols for wind chill warnings when apparent temperatures drop below 35 degrees below zero. But tonight's event will far exceed these thresholds across broad areas, potentially creating the need for emergency declarations and coordinated public safety responses. Emergency medical services are preparing for increased calls related to cold exposure, hypothermia, and frostbite, as people underestimate the danger of these extreme conditions. The geographic scope of tonight's Arctic blast is truly staggering, encompassing an area from the Canadian border southward to the Gulf Coast states and from the Rocky Mountains eastward to the Atlantic Ocean. This represents one of the most extensive cold air outbreaks to affect the continental United States in recent years, with impacts that will be felt by well over 200 million Americans across more than 30 states. Minnesota and Wisconsin will experience the most extreme conditions, with air temperatures dropping to 25 to 35 degrees below zero and wind chills potentially reaching 60 degrees below zero in some locations, particularly in northeastern Minnesota and northern Wisconsin, where topographic effects can enhance cold air pooling. These are temperatures where exposed metal becomes dangerous to touch, where car batteries fail even with block heaters, where heating systems struggle to maintain indoor temperatures despite running continuously. The Twin Cities metropolitan area, home to more than 3 million people, is preparing for conditions that could rank among the coldest in the city's recorded weather history, with actual temperatures potentially dropping to 25 degrees below zero and wind chills approaching 50 below. Wisconsin's largest cities, including Milwaukee, Madison, and Green Bay, face similarly brutal conditions, with additional challenges from lake effect processes that could create localized areas of even more extreme cold. The state's dairy industry, which operates year-round regardless of weather conditions, faces particular challenges, as extreme cold can affect milk production. The Dakotas and northern Iowa will face similarly brutal conditions, with widespread temperatures in the 20 to 30 below zero range and wind chills that could exceed 50 degrees below zero. These states have experienced severe cold already this winter, but tonight's blast will likely surpass anything seen so far this season. Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan will also experience dangerous cold, with temperatures dropping well below zero and wind chills reaching 20 to 30 degrees below zero. Cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Indianapolis are preparing for conditions that could force the closure of schools, businesses, and transportation systems. But what makes tonight's Arctic blast particularly concerning is how far south this intense cold will penetrate, reaching areas that rarely experience such extreme conditions and creating dangerous situations for populations and infrastructure not designed to handle Arctic-level temperatures. Tennessee, Kentucky, and northern portions of Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas will see temperatures drop into the single digits, and teens with wind chills reaching well below zero in many locations where such conditions are virtually unprecedented in modern weather records. Nashville, which just endured significant ice accumulation from Winter Storm Fern, now faces the prospect of temperatures dropping to around 0 degrees with wind chills approaching 20 degrees below zero. The combination of any remaining ice from the previous storm and these extreme temperatures creates particularly hazardous conditions. Even more remarkable is the southward extent of freezing temperatures, which are forecast to reach as far south as central and southern Florida by the weekend, bringing freezing conditions to areas where such temperatures occur perhaps once in a decade. Miami could experience its coldest temperatures in more than 15 years, with morning lows potentially dropping into the upper 30s. The duration of this cold outbreak adds another dimension to its significance, as the Arctic air mass is forecast to maintain its grip on much of the United States for at least 5 to 7 days. This is not a quick-hitting cold snap that moves through in 24 to 48 hours, but rather a sustained period of dangerous cold that will test infrastructure, strain energy systems, and create ongoing hazards for human health and safety. Energy demand across the affected regions will surge to levels typically seen only during the most extreme winter weather events, as heating systems work overtime to maintain comfortable indoor temperatures. Natural gas and electricity consumption will likely set records in many areas, potentially straining supply systems and leading to appeals for conservation to prevent brownouts or other service disruptions. The agricultural implications of this Arctic blast cannot be overlooked, particularly for livestock operations across the plains, states, and upper Midwest. Cattle, sheep, and other animals will require additional shelter and feed to survive the extreme conditions, while dairy operations may face significant challenges in maintaining normal production levels during the most intense cold. Transportation systems across the affected regions are already implementing cold weather protocols in anticipation of tonight's Arctic blast. Airlines are prepositioning aircraft in warmer locations and adjusting flight schedules to account for longer de-icing procedures and potential equipment failures. Railway operators are taking steps to prevent frozen switches and rail breaks that commonly occur during extreme cold events. Highway departments are focusing on keeping major interstate corridors open, but even with treatment, road surfaces will become extremely slick as any moisture freezes instantly in the Arctic air. The combination of reduced visibility from blowing snow and dangerous road conditions will make travel hazardous across much of the impact zone. But perhaps most concerning is how this Arctic blast will interact with the ongoing recovery efforts from Winter Storm Fern, as many areas are still dealing with infrastructure damage and power outages from the previous weather event. Utility crews working to restore electricity and repair damaged systems will face additional challenges as they attempt to work in life-threatening cold conditions. The meteorological pattern driving tonight's Arctic blast shows remarkable persistence in extended range forecasts, suggesting that this may be the beginning of a prolonged period of well below normal temperatures that could last through the first half of February. The same disrupted polar vortex shows little sign of returning to its normal configuration. Historical analysis of similar atmospheric patterns suggests that when Arctic air masses of this magnitude occur, they often trigger additional weather events, including the potential for significant snowstorms as the extreme cold interacts with moisture from southern regions. The setup is particularly favorable for lake effect snow events across the Great Lakes region. Emergency management officials across the potential impact zone are implementing cold weather protocols and opening warming centers in anticipation of increased demand for emergency shelter. The combination of extreme cold and ongoing power outages from Winter Storm Fern creates particularly dangerous conditions for vulnerable populations. Public health authorities are issuing warnings about the increased risks of cold-related illnesses, including hypothermia and frostbite, during this Arctic blast. Emergency departments across the impact zone are preparing for an influx of cold-related medical emergencies during the most intense period expected Friday through Sunday. School systems across multiple states are already announcing closures for Friday and potentially extending through early next week, as the extreme cold creates unsafe conditions for children. Many districts that remained open during previous cold snaps are taking the unusual step of preemptive closures due to the anticipated severity. The economic implications of this Arctic blast extend far beyond the immediate energy costs, as businesses across affected regions may be forced to close or reduce operations during the most extreme conditions. Retail establishments, manufacturing facilities, and service industries all face challenges in maintaining normal operations when temperatures drop to life-threatening levels. Construction and outdoor work activities will be virtually impossible across much of the impact zone during the height of the cold outbreak. As exposed workers face serious risk of cold-related injuries, many projects will be suspended until temperatures return to safer levels. The psychological impact of extended extreme cold should not be underestimated, as the combination of dangerous outdoor conditions and potential indoor heating challenges can create significant stress for individuals and families. Mental health resources are preparing for increased demand as people deal with isolation and anxiety. Yet this Arctic blast represents more than just a weather event to endure. It demonstrates the new reality of winter weather patterns in an era of climate disruption, where traditional seasonal norms no longer provide reliable guidance for preparation and response. The increasing frequency of extreme polar vortex disruptions means that events like tonight's Arctic blast may become more common. Scientific research into Arctic climate change has revealed complex connections between warming in polar regions and the increased instability of the polar vortex, leading to more frequent southward excursions of Arctic air. This paradoxical relationship means that extreme events like tonight's blast may represent the new normal. The technological capabilities that allow meteorologists to predict these extreme cold events have improved dramatically, providing several days of advance warning that enables better preparation and response. However, the challenge remains in communicating the true danger of these conditions to the public. Residents across the impact zone are urged to take this Arctic blast seriously and complete all necessary preparations before temperatures begin their dramatic decline tonight. This includes checking heating systems, insulating exposed pipes, ensuring adequate food and emergency supplies, and avoiding unnecessary travel once extreme conditions begin. The next 72 hours will test the resilience of communities, infrastructure, and individuals across a vast portion of the United States as this historic Arctic blast delivers some of the most dangerous winter weather conditions experienced in years. While modern forecasting provides advance warning, the ultimate impact will depend on preparation and response. Tonight's Arctic blast marks the beginning of what may be the most significant winter weather challenge of 2026, as the same atmospheric disruption that produced Winter Storm Fern now unleashes life-threatening cold that will dominate the weather pattern across most of the United States for the foreseeable future.